Welcome to the Alpine Church of Spiritual Living this morning. Excuse me. If you are watching this on our website or on YouTube, we welcome you as well, and we trust that we are giving you some spiritual food for thought and for action. And if that's the case, we would appreciate you going on our website, alpinechurchofspiritualliving.org, and hitting the donate button to let us know that we are feeding you spiritually. I'm going to be reading the thought for the week, and it is entitled Free to be Responsible. The nation was officially birthed on July 4th, 1776, with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. However, the first fledgling colony, Jamestown, Virginia, was established in 1607, 169 years earlier. As we look at those who shaped the formation of our new government, one has to admit they took responsibility for their lives. They were driven by the desire to worship as they pleased, have representation and a voice in governmental affairs, and in general be free to choose how they would live their lives. It's been 416 years since those first colonists came to what is now known as the United States of America. Life in the USA has changed drastically since those early years. Greater population numbers have equated to bigger government and more controls, something our forefathers came here to avoid. The first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence refers to the laws of nature and of nature's God. Life is ever changing and evolving, that is given. But the underlying essence of humankind is a solid foundation formed by God that is equipped to handle and meet any earthly challenge. We have within us all we need to rise above any limitations. It just takes being aware and being responsible to reflect our God-given qualities out into today's world. We are always free to choose what we think. We are always at choice as to what we subsequently say and the way in which we act. Let us bring forth our highest and best qualities and see that in others. Say with me, I am grateful that I live in the USA and recognize I am responsible for the life I am living. Let me live it with love, grace, and understanding. And it is so. So I love the fact that our country was founded by people who had faith in God, and they were willing to write that, put it down literally on the documents that formed this country. Even though some of them were slave owners at the time, they were available to allow that God-given wisdom to come through them when they were saying that all men are created equal, that they allowed that God itself was the one that was writing that document for us. So our theme this month is free to, and the message today is free to be responsible. The synonyms for responsible are accountable, answerable, in charge, in control, and in authority. I have to admit that as a youth, I rebelled against being responsible. I felt that that was something that big people and grown-ups needed to do, but I didn't really want to have anything to do with being responsible because I wanted to be carefree and light and all of that. But at the time of youth, that's what youth thinks. But as you grow older in wisdom, hopefully, you recognize that being responsible is a gift that we give ourselves, our families, those around us in society, so that we can provide what our God qualities are to ourselves and to others. And so I've been studying spiritual matters for many years, and I have changed my mind about being responsible. One of the synonyms that was stated was to be in authority. And several years ago, our Anton Conference, affiliated New Thought Network Conference, had as its theme, Spirit is the ultimate authority. And how true is that? That this beautiful energy, this essence, this God creation has ultimate authority. And to me, that is it's a fail-safe feeling of knowing that God's in control, that God is the ultimate authority, that love is the ultimate authority, that peace is the ultimate authority. And how consoling that is to know that that is my demeanor too, that that's what I'm about, because each of us is an individualized expression of that infinite, beautiful being of love, of peace, of freedom. Michael Beckwith put together some CDs that I listened to many times, and they are on the 4 stages of our spiritual maturity, the stages that we go through as we mature in our spiritual awareness. And the first stage is the victim stage, that life is happening to me, and that we have no responsibility whatsoever, that it's others are doing things to me. And we are in that thinking, in that mode, you're very immature in your spiritual awareness, because you're thinking that you're separate, that you have no power, and that you are relinquishing your power, absolutely, that you do have. And when you don't realize it, many times we are so innocent in our immaturity. We are just naive. We really don't know how much of an authority we have. So we think then, if we're in that victim mode, that it's not my fault. I can put blame on others for doing what they did to me. And many times you'll have that thought that the devil made me do it. That devil made me do it, darn that devil, I'm going to put the blame on the devil. And as we come into New Thought, into Science of Mind, we realize that there is one power, one presence, and there is no separate presence and power of the devil. There are experiences of less than wholeness, but that doesn't mean that there is a separate power generating and supporting that. That is just an experience of this life energy. When we come into this teaching, we talk about the treatment, which we call affirmative prayer, and it has 5 steps. The first one is to recognize that there is only one power, and it is God. It is infinite, it is good, it is wisdom. It is all of those things, everywhere present. So we fall into that awareness in that first step of treatment when we go into prayer, that there is this one life. And the second step is that this life is living through me. This life is my life. And everything about that life is true about me. That life is love, that life is joy, that life is peace. And that is the truth of what I am. So we unite with it. And as we unite with that one power and presence, then we speak our word as to what we would like to have experienced in our lives. We come up with whatever the recognition is that we'd like to have, whether it be something physical with a car, a home, it could be relationships, it could be health, it could be all sorts of different ways that we as a human experience this thing called life. And so we state our claim as to what it is that we want to experience now, and it is happening now, because it is being established in the mind of God in that spiritual form. So our 4th stage of treatment is the thanksgiving, saying, great, it's done. It's happening, and I am ever so grateful. And there's a lightness about that, an acceptance about that, and that's the 5th stage, is accepting it, is to let it go, to release it. We talked a lot about releasing this whole last year, because letting go is one of the ultimate steps that we need to remember, as we live in each and every moment. We let go of the past, we let go of fear, we let go of limitation, and we just let God, love, energy do its manifestation, do its work, do its revealing through us, through our lives. I had a longtime friend stop by the house not too long ago, and she hadn't been there before. And when you walk into the front door, there's this big window there that looks out over the pasture and so forth. And she just went, "Oh my gosh." She said, "Look at what you've manifested." And it was interesting that she used that word. I hadn't thought. I said, "Well, I tell you what. Before I moved here, I made a list of what I would like to have in a new home, and a view was one of them." And it wasn't. I didn't picture the view I have. But it's beautiful. I love it, and I have to acknowledge that I feel extremely blessed by being where I live. And so I want us to be aware that all of us really are responsible for our lives. Now, there are things that can happen that we don't prefer. There are things that we don't think that we desired, that we don't think that we drew to us. And in those instances, I think it's very important for us to remain open that what is this experiencing teaching me? How is this experience growing me? Life is not happening to me, life is happening for me. And when we take that demeanor, when we take that just a little twist of perspective, we then open ourselves up to greater possibilities, to greater potentials of what this particular situation, where at first glance may not look very pretty, may not make me happy, but what can it do for me? Where is it that I can grow and become more so that I can bring myself above this seeming limitation? We want to be teachable at all times, because we are this infinite being living a life in a human body form. And we bring our consciousness with us wherever we go. As we have grown in consciousness, that will precede us and bring forth more of the good that we are. So we want to look at whatever the underlying belief might be that we have brought with us in our consciousness that has brought whatever the situation to us, so that we can be responsible, so that we can respond with clarity, that we can respond knowing that this is here for my good. James Allen said, "All failures are apparent, not real. Every slip, every fall, every return to selfishness is a lesson learned, an experience gained, from which a golden thread of wisdom is extracted." When we can look for the wisdom, when we can look for how can I be responsible to respond to this situation from a higher level. And so the second level of our spiritual maturity is the law, or the manifester. And this is where we recognize that I'm moving out of the victim stage. It's no longer that life is happening to me, but that I can literally have dominion, that I can speak my word, and that I can have my will be experienced in this life. That's why we do the 5-step treatment. So we put in there in that third element what it is we want to have. And that's great. That is the second level of spiritual maturity, though, my dears. As we move on, we go from life is happening from me to life is happening through me, the third stage, that I am more open and receptive to allow this infinite being to move through me. And it's a challenge to do that because what we end up giving up, we gave up blame, first of all. Well, now we have to give up control. We have to allow ourselves to know that it's not the little I am in control here. There is something greater within me that I'm allowing and letting come forth through me. I love in our book studies recently, we have somebody that keeps saying, and because we get confused about way things are written and, what do they mean by this and this and that? Well, more is to be revealed. More to be revealed. And I love that answer because that's the truth. More to be revealed for us. And then that fourth stage of spiritual maturity is not just through me, but as me. The will and the nature of the divine is me, as me. And remember, these levels are not, okay, I've done the victim one, I've checked that off, that's done. Number 2, I've done the manifester, yeah, check that off, I'm done. Now I'm in the third stage of flowing through me, yeah, I've had that, check that off. And now it's as me. But they aren't that concrete. Those levels are fluid. And even as spiritually mature as we think we can be, there can be times when we will feel like the victim. And what's the important thing is to realize is in our spiritual maturity, the quicker that we can recognize that thinking, the quicker that we can turn our awareness and say, oh, that's right. I'm having that victim mentality at the moment, and be aware of it, to honor it, to know that sometimes that's going to happen, but that we don't have to stay there. Years ago, I went to a workshop in Boerne, Texas. How many of you have ever been to Boerne, Texas? No? Walter Starkey had a ranch there. And I went to a workshop that Walter Starkey was putting on, and the gal that was the musician for the event was named Lorna Bright, and she had made a CD, which of course I bought. When you go to those things, you buy schlep all the stuff home. But she had this wonderful sense of writing these different songs, and she put together this whole CD on coordinating a treatment with a song. And one of the ones that I think it comes into my mind many, many times, one of the ones is, the choices that we make are the way that we create the life that we experience day by day. The choices that we make are the way that we create the life that we experience day by day. The choices that we make. How critical is that? At every moment, we can be free to make a different choice, to make a choice that is supportive of ourselves, of knowing that at every moment I am doing my best. And that every moment, as we come through this teaching of spiritual mind, of science of mind, of Ernest Holmes' teaching, we are open at the top. Open at the top means that we are allowing ourselves to, and others, to be who they are, and to know that a greater good exists. A quote by Dane Stoffer: God gives you the dots. Connecting the dots is up to you. We have free will. We have choices that we make. When we listen, when we go within and listen to the messages of our higher inner self, we can trust that we can discover more of this infinite being. A nurse went into a pediatric ward. Before listening to the little one's chest, she would plug the stethoscope into their ears and let them listen to their own hearts. Their eyes would always light up with awe. But she never got a response to equal 4-year-old David's. She placed the disc over his heart. Listen, she said, what do you suppose that is? He drew his eyebrows together in a puzzled line and looked up, as if lost in the mystery of the strange tap, tap, tapping deep in his chest. Then his face broke out in a wondrous grin, and he asked, is that God knocking? Our lives are the life of God. God is knocking, God is tapping within us. And it is up to us to be open and receptive to connecting those dots that God gives us. It is our responsibility to live at the highest level we can, to experience this God self that we are and that we see in others. I am grateful for the forefathers that came to this country, that listened and took responsibility for forming a nation that makes sense. So I would like you to set your intention this coming week to grow through this spiritual ladder of maturity, to be responsible, and to be open and receptive for what is this infinite being that I am, ready, willing, and able to do through me this day and always. Namaste.